Hello and welcome to my weekly series, Meanwhile in the West, where I read through the letters to the editor in my local newspaper, the West Australian, and I criticise the stupid people who write in stupid things. First up, And Pigs Do Fly, 24th of September 2014. The Elvish, What Now? Letters 23rd of the 9th, wants to know what would happen if a black box in outer space proved there was no God. No God, no black box, no trips to space, no us. Unless you believe the fundamentalist science view that we created ourselves out of nothing from nowhere. Now that's a fairy tale. Terry Dwyer, Warwick. Okay, so this is the standard creationist straw man that if you don't believe in God, then you must have some kind of view that everything came from nothing, and as you so eloquently put it, Terry, that we created ourselves out of nothing, which nobody actually believes. The closest you could come is that, cosmology has seemed to suggest that maybe the universe came from nothing. Maybe. Although there are plenty of models where that's not the case. And it's hardly a fundamentalist science view. Sure, I guess some people might be dogmatically attached to some views within science, but that's hardly the thing that most people who don't believe in God are going with. Most of us who don't believe in God simply accept what the scientists have been telling us, which is we don't know where the universe came from. It may have come from nothing, if you can define nothing in some useful way. It's hardly a fairy tale. Now, God, on the other hand, that's a fairy tale. It's about football, Gabby, 24th of September 2014. While I agree with Gabby Greco that she doesn't need to defend her dress code, it remains in question whether her bondage frock was appropriate, given that it was the Brownlow Medals and not the Gabby Greco show. A little more respect to football wouldn't have gone astray. Mark Garrettson Bunbury. Okay. So, the Brownlow Medal is an annual award ceremony for Australian rules football, in which they give the medal to the best and fairest player of the year. Over the last decade or so, it has really become a big media event. So, one of the, I think it's Channel 7 pushes it, and recently, certainly over the last 5 to 10 years, they've really pushed the WAGs angle, which up until then wasn't such a big thing. So now it's all the wives and girlfriends, and a lot of celebrities get invited, and there's a whole red carpet treatment. And so Gabby Greco, who's famous for not very much, attended and wore a fairly sort of out there dress. Not Björk out there, just normal out there. The thing is, this is fairly standard and has been for a while. This dress is no more out there than many of the others I've seen on many other red carpets. And the whole point of it was that she was invited, presumably with the full knowledge that this is the kind of thing that people wear. What she was wearing is not outside of the ordinary. And so the people who, if anybody, is disrespecting the footballness of the event, it's the AFL themselves, and with their dealings with the commercial TV network to turn it into some kind of celebrity circus. There's been a big push for this kind of thing to try and popularise the game via its sort of extraneous off-field things. And it's hardly Gabby Greco who was causing the problem. And as you rightly put out, she doesn't need to defend her dress code. What she wore was entirely appropriate. For older drivers, 25th of September 2014. There have been a lot of moaning and complaining about drink driving. Why won't the government change the drinking age back to 21 years? S. Stratton, Rockingham. So, putting it back 3 years, firstly, the standard response most people say is that this wouldn't prevent people younger than 21 from drinking. I think that kind of misses some of the point. At the moment, we have people who are drinking age is 18, we have plenty of people under 18 who drink. I think, though, that if it was pushed back to 21, that the youngest that people would be drinking probably would shift back, so that people would perhaps start drinking later. Whether that's balanced out by, say, denying adults the right to, do anything else that other adults are doing, I'm not sure. But I suspect it would have a thing. Would it reduce drink driving? I actually doubt this. Most of the research into criminal behaviour, like, say, drink driving, is that a disproportionate amount of the offence is caused by a relatively small number of people. This is often referred to in other contexts as the Pareto principle. So in offending, it's often 80-20 or even worse than that. So 80% of, say, drink driving is caused by 20% of drink drivers who are repeat serial offenders. And those people are probably not overrepresented in the 18 to 21 age group. We know that the bulk of people who drink drive habitually do so because they have drinking problems, and they're shared across many age groups, certainly well past 21. So I would suspect that the actual rate at which people would drink driving would be barely affected by shifting the drinking age back by 21 to 21. In fact, I suspect that it would do very little to shift that. Hard Facts of Life, 26th of September 2014. Jocelyn Jones and Dr. Mandy Wilson make good print in their comments regarding imprisonment of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. Trauma of making a jailbird of mum, letters 25th of the 9th. Whether of Aboriginal or white descent, if someone doesn't break the law, they don't go to jail. Peter Burton, Geraldton. In an ideal society, that's exactly how it would work. Those who break the law would go to jail, and those who don't break the law wouldn't go to jail. But we know that that doesn't work in reality. So in reality, lots of people don't go to jail, or at least lots of crimes do not result in imprisonment. Due to the Pareto principle I've already mentioned, we are actually pretty good at locking up people who commit most of the crimes. But most of their crimes are not actually result in imprisonment. So the latest stats I had a little look at was, say, car theft. The clearance rate for car theft here is about 25%, which means that 3/4 of cars being stolen do not result in any kind of charge. And therefore, that's a whole bunch of crimes that go unpunished. On the other side, we know that Aboriginal people are much more likely to be imprisoned than otherwise. So we also know that, say, two people who have done exactly the same offence with exactly the same history, that the person who is Aboriginal is more likely to be imprisoned than the person who is not Aboriginal. This is a systematic racial bias within our criminal justice system. And so it's not as simple as simply not doing the crime, don't go into jail, because we know that the people who do the crime, some people get away with it more than other people. And in fact, the people who get away with it are the non-Aboriginal people. Now, you might say that's beside the point. The thing is, we also know that Aboriginal women in particular are overrepresented, and we know that that then has a generational effect. So Aboriginal women are more likely to be sent to jail than non-Aboriginal women for the same offences in the same circumstances. And therefore, the children of Aboriginal women, Aboriginal children generally, are more likely to suffer the consequences of that and then in turn go on to commit crime. So we have this vicious circle. Now, anybody who has a vested interest in our society doing well recognises this as a problem, that although we want to punish people, we also need to have one eye on the pragmatic future of our society, and that creating intergenerational offenders probably isn't a good thing. We should probably do something about that. That doesn't mean that we should allow people to get away with crime, but that means that we should look at other ways of, say, enforcing justice that doesn't then go on to affect children and other innocent people more than absolutely necessary. Act of Affirmation, 27th of September 2014. Why doesn't the government print stickers stating, "We support Australia, we don't support ISIS," and offer to place them high up on mosques and Muslim schools, where they can be seen and not easily defaced or removed? Smaller bumper stickers could be supplied to the mullahs at the mosques, so that worshippers can display these on cars, thereby reassuring non-Muslim Australians of their allegiance to the Australian way of life. I am sure these acts of affirmation would greatly diffuse any religious tensions in the Australian community. Simon Feldman, Applecross. This is a good example of where marginalised groups are generally expected to carry much higher burden for social unrest, even when it's got actually nothing to do with them. So the vast majority of Muslims in Australia have absolutely nothing to do with terrorism, don't support the terrorists, etc., and get on with their lives just like you or I do. But the dis-ease, the unease with which the non-Muslim community view Muslims now, given the action of a tiny minority of extremists, we suddenly feel uncomfortable. We continue to feel uncomfortable. We suddenly feel a bit more uncomfortable with Muslim people in our community. What should we do about that? I know, instead of us doing something about that, say addressing our own uncertainty, our own unease with Muslim people, taking on board that the fact that I, as a non-Muslim person, might feel uncomfortable taking that on board as my problem that I should do something about. I know better than that. Let's externalize that and put that on them. The them being just random Muslim people who have nothing to do with terrorism. And say, actually, why don't we make them responsible for my discomfort? I'm a member of the majority. I shouldn't have to do anything about that. They're a member of the minority, that are in a marginalised group, a group that is easily demonised. Let's make them take responsibility for it. Now, you might say, well, if it was the situation was reversed, I would be happy to do that. Yeah, and you probably would, because you probably come from a less marginalised group. The problem with this is it always seems to fall on the marginalised group. And I actually think that in this case, as in most cases, it's incumbent upon us who are, I don't know, worried about terrorism to take responsibility for that and do something about it. And that the thing that we should do shouldn't be looking for other people to make us feel better. That's just stupid. And, frankly, a little bit racist. Maybe not racist, maybe just Islamophobic. Slash car theft, 30th of September 2014. Almost every day a vehicle is stolen, often with tragic results. Seatbelts are compulsory. It should be compulsory, for insurance, for all vehicles to have steering locks to keep thefts to a minimum. Frank Cherry, Southlake. Ah, brilliant. Another one of these simple solutions that won't work to problems that don't really exist. So the law here is that you can't sell a vehicle in Western Australia without it being fitted with a government-approved immobiliser. Has been like that for the last, well, more than a decade, more like 20 years, I think. As a result, unless you are in the top percentage, 0.1% of professional car thieves, you cannot break the immobilisers. It's fairly simple to build an immobiliser that is beyond the technical capabilities of all but the most professional of car thieves. And as far as I know, we don't actually have super professional car thieves like that operating in the state. And in fact, the professional car thieves that we do have don't break the immobiliser. They don't overcome the immobilising technology. What they do is they simply steal the car keys and use them to switch off the immobiliser and drive off. The same logic applies here to your steering lock. Any steering lock or any kind of security system that is easy enough that I can activate it and drive my car and not have it be, too cumbersome is easy enough for a determined car thief to steal from me. So now, we've all but eliminated the hot wiring of cars. It simply doesn't happen in Western Australia as far as I know. You would have to find a very old car that hadn't changed hands any time in the last 20 years, which essentially there are very, very few of on the road. So now, what happens in almost all cases of car theft is the keys are simply stolen. So what happened is when they brought this in, we did see an increase in burglaries because people who wanted a car would burgle the house to steal the keys to get the car. We saw a small increase in carjackings, but basically they're almost non-existent here. Very, very rare that you see a carjacking, so what we have is a burglary to steal the keys to steal the car. And professional car thieves do that as much as amateur car thieves. And any kind of steering lock would basically be no more effective than the current immobilisers. The other thing is that the rates of car theft has gone down dramatically in the last decade or so. In fact, I looked at the last decade's worth of figures, and the rate of car theft in the last 10 years has gone down about 40%, the absolute number of car thefts per year in Western Australia has gone down about 40%. So in 2004, I think it was about, let me get this right, about 8 to 10,000 a year. Now it's about 5,000 to 8,000 a year. So there has been a decrease in the number of car thefts per year. At the same time, we've had about a 40% increase in population, from about 1.3 million to almost 2 million, which means that the rate of car theft has probably at least halved, which means that actually the war is being won. Car theft is becoming a thing of the past. Now, 8,000 a year sounds like a lot, but that's not a whole lot in a city of 2 million people, or a state of 2 million people. That's actually a very small number. And so really, what you're proposing is a solution to a problem that isn't actually really a big thing. Anyway, that's it for this week. I feel much better having had a rant about stupid people. Hope you're doing well, and I'll see you next time when we find out what's happening in the West. See ya.